Thank you all for being here. Thanks for being patient, by the way, as well. Want to welcome you to the State Office building here in Los Angeles. I'm joined by many of our city, county, and state leaders, and many of the people who've worked very hard on the subject that we're going to speak on today. Let me introduce the folks who will speak so you know, and who will be making remarks in the order in which they will be speaking. After I make some remarks, I'm going to ask my colleague, the city attorney for the city of Los Angeles, Mike Feuer, to speak. Then I will ask the county supervisor who's been working on this issue for quite some time on behalf of all the residents who've been affected by the Aliso Canyon natural gas leak to speak. Catherine Borger, the supervisor who has been working this. Then I will ask Supervisor Borger to please introduce our mayor for the city of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. Mayor Garcetti will then introduce the councilman who's also been working this for the residents he represents in the areas that were affected as well, Mitch Englander. And then after that, we will take any questions from the media who are assembled here with us today. I want to also acknowledge some of my team who are present today. Not all the members of my team who worked on this litigation are here, but I do want to recognize Catherine Weeman, who is here, who is a Deputy Attorney General, Shannon Clark, a Deputy Attorney General with the Department of Justice, and Arsenio Mataka, a Special Assistant Attorney General in the office, who are with me as well. On the heels of the news that SoCalGas has spent nearly $1 billion so far addressing the well blowout and the ensuing massive natural gas leak at the company's Aliso Canyon facility, today we are here, State of California, County of Los Angeles, City of Los Angeles, to announce that we have reached a settlement with Southern California Gas Company to resolve our public claims. In our cases against Southern California Gas, we allege that SoCalGas violated California public nuisance laws, California health and safety codes, and those relate to the unlawful discharge of air contaminants that cause a nuisance or injury to a considerable number of people, and a failure to timely report the release of hazardous material. We allege that they violated business and profession codes sections that deal with unfair competition laws. And we also sought full mitigation of the GHG, the greenhouse gas impact of the leak, pursuant to health and safety code in our state's statutes. All of that was undertaken to try to address one component of this incident. One component. This is the public sector component, the governments of the city and county of Los Angeles and the state of California addressing this incident based on California law. This component will address a number of items that I think all of us will speak to in terms of the settlement. But I want to make sure it's clear. This does not resolve another crucial component that resulted from this incident, and that is the personal harm and injury and damages that Angelenos suffered as a result of this leak. Whether you were living in Porter Ranch or not, that litigation is ongoing, and it involves hundreds of lawsuits and thousands of litigants at this very moment. This also does not resolve another very important component of the legal actions that are being taken to address this incident. And that component is the one that tries to discover the root cause of this incident. That is under the jurisdiction of the California Public Utilities Commission. And they are right now in the process of doing the investigative work to come out with an answer to the root cause of this particular incident. From that may also come consequences, including enforcement actions that CPUC may decide to take. And finally, there's a fourth component that everyone is aware of because it was the immediate action necessary to address the leak. All the work that had to be done to evacuate people, to provide them with shelter, to address the conditions in their homes, most of that covered by Southern California Gas. And as we know, they've indicated that they've had to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to date to address those different aspects of this incident. All of that put together gives you a sense of what happens when something as devastating as the largest natural gas leak in the history of recorded time occurs, and it occurs here among our families in Los Angeles and certainly in Porter Ranch. And so we came up with a settlement, and I'm going to give you a brief outline of it, and I think each of those speakers who will follow me will give you further details, but just roughly to give you an idea, $119 million worth of penalties and dollars that will be made available to address the actions that we had to take as governments representing the people of our city, of our county, and our state. The breakdown, we can get into that, and you have details of that as well, but much of it is in penalties against Southern California Gas. The taxpayers will not have to foot the bill for the work that was done by our legal team, because we will get reimbursement for the taxpayer expenses to litigate this matter to this conclusion. And we are able to provide resources through this settlement for activities and projects which will continue to help our area resolve the degradation of our environment as a result of whether it's methane or other environmental difficulties that we have dealing with the communities that we have here in Los Angeles. And so part of this settlement includes the monitoring of methane at the Aliso Canyon facility's fence line. So that way we have current information year to year for quite some time about the levels of methane, so we can see if there's a need to trigger action in any case that it may involve a methane leak. The settlement requires that SoCalGas create an internal safety committee which will monitor many of these activities. There will be an independent safety ombudsman who will be established to evaluate the internal safety committee's work and report to the public on safety-related issues at the Aliso Canyon facility. And we require in this settlement that Southern California Gas refrain from shifting the cost of this settlement onto ratepayers who use SoCalGas facilities and utilities. In addition, as I mentioned, there will be a number of activities undertaken to address this incident and incidents like this. A long-term health study, which I know that it was very important to the county and the city of Los Angeles to address the needs of those in Porter Ranch, was provided for. And this will be the first time we will be able to have an assessment of the direct health impacts of this leak. We will have a local monitoring network established in Porter Ranch. There will be a mitigation fund that will be available to help mitigate this type of pollution in the future. And as I said, we will provide additional environmental relief to try to help deal with the aftermath of things like this. And so I believe the three public governmental entities here involved believe that we were able to secure a settlement that works in the public's interest. But I want to make sure I'm clear. This is but one component of what must be resolved to finally close every chapter in this episode involving the historic blowout and massive leak of natural gas, methane gas at the Aliso Canyon site. With that, let me now turn to City Attorney Mike Feuer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. When my office first filed our lawsuit against Southern California Gas 975 days ago, I had three goals. The first of those goals was that there be a judicially enforceable climate change mitigation plan. Why? Because at the early stages of this catastrophe, Southern California Gas was expressing reluctance to be legally bound to such a plan. And as the Attorney General mentioned, largest methane leak in the history of the United States, the equivalent of 440,000 cars running for a year when it comes to the impact on our environment. Methane, of course, is 30 times more dangerous when it comes to trapping greenhouse gases than is carbon dioxide. So to have a climate change mitigation plan that was enforceable by a court, key goal. Second objective, we wanted to be sure that there were strong measures put in place to prevent such an incident from ever happening again. And our third goal was to hold Southern California Gas accountable. This resolution achieves and surpasses those objectives. Let me talk a little bit about why. First, from the standpoint of residents who are in the Porter Ranch community, this resolution provides them with important health and environmental protections and the transparency that is so necessary for all our communities. Look, I get it. If I lived in the Porter Ranch neighborhood, I'd be saying, look, I've borne a lot of burdens here. We have suffered a lot in this community. And I'd be saying, too, I'm never sure that I'm getting the straight story. So what does this resolution do to address those residents and their legitimate concerns? As the Attorney General mentioned, up to $25 million for a health study to look at the long-term impacts of exposure to methane and its constituent gases that were released from the site. This was something we heard again and again was essential from the standpoint of residents in that community. It's going to be administered, by the way, by public health experts from agencies at the local, state, and federal levels to be sure it's objective and thorough. What else would I be looking at as a Porter Ranch resident? There's up to $3 million for the monitoring of air at Porter Ranch and an environmental justice community. That air monitoring is going to take place in conjunction with members of the neighborhood. Where should we be looking? What should we be seeking in that air monitoring? It's going to be a team effort because residents need information they can trust. What else? It expands the existing fence line monitoring. Let's talk in plain language about what that means. Around the periphery of Aliso Canyon, of the site, there are locations where emissions are captured, monitoring what emissions might be emerging from the site. Before this resolution, that program was to be in place for 3 years. Now it's to be in place for 8 years. Before this resolution, there was no regular public reporting on the causes and outcomes of their analysis. Where do the emissions come from? What's being done about it? Now regular reports, both to the public in a timely way and to the governmental entities that brought this lawsuit. There is going to be an internal safety committee reconvened at the gas company so that within the gas company, issues that arise when it comes to health and safety and proposals for how to make the facility more safe come to light early on. But that internal committee is going to be complemented by a first-time step in this case. There will be an ombudsman, a third party, who not only participates in these regular safety meetings, but looks at the reports that emerge from state regulators, listens to complaints from the community, prepares a written report every year as to what it finds, and importantly, will hold a town hall meeting at least once a year in the Porter Ranch community so the community can come together, listen, ask basic questions, and find out what's really been going on. These are all essential ingredients in this resolution, but there is more. Because for the broader communities in this region, all of whom are affected by issues of air quality, for example, there are specific programs that will be put in place. More than $7 million for kids who live in neighborhoods whose schools are in communities where pollution is at a high level. Their schools will have air filtration devices imposed. Up to 100 schools will benefit from that. There'll be money, more than $5 million, to grapple with the issues of lead in the communities adversely affected by Exide, making sure that those houses have lead paint abated, up to 350 homes. There'll be money for electric school buses. There are almost no electric school buses in LAUSD. My kids went through kindergarten and through 12th grade at LAUSD riding in diesel buses. How different it will be when we're able to infuse money for new school buses that operate on electricity for our kids. What else? This is going to buy at least 3 breathmobiles, operated throughout the county because there are individuals who have asthma who have no access to meaningful public health. They need to have a way for intervention to occur. My daughter was a softball pitcher in high school. She had asthma. I know how it felt to get the phone call when I was in the state legislature to learn that she'd been pitching and she had gotten off the mound because she couldn't breathe anymore. How important it is for our kids to have access to that kind of health care. And there are additional elements to this that are really important. It complements an increasingly robust regulatory regime that's been put in place since we filed our lawsuit in the first place. As Javier mentioned, they can't pass along the costs. The gas company can't pass along the costs of any of these mandates to its consumers. So with that, let me take what is a moment of personal privilege, actually, to introduce someone who has become a good friend since she assumed office. Catherine Barger has been a supervisor in LA County, but before that, she had decades working as a staff member in that building. She brings that expertise and, I will say, an incisive, focused style of leadership to the county. Catherine, it is a pleasure to collaborate with you. Please come forward.
Oh, thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Today, we are ensuring justice to the residents of Porter Ranch that, quite frankly, is long overdue. For nearly 3 years, this community has endured such upheaval. At last, we have a comprehensive, tentative settlement that meets the community's priorities as well as mine. I want to thank Attorney General Javier Becerra and LA City Attorney Mike Feuer for their leadership and partnership. I especially want to express my thanks to our County Counsel, Mary Wickham, and her entire legal team for their excellent legal minds and commitment to fight for the community from the inception of the gas blowout under the leadership of then Supervisor Mike Antonovich. Since the Aliso Canyon disaster, thousands of residents were displaced from their homes and suffered health concerns. The tentative three-way settlement includes the funds necessary to conduct a health study, which has been a priority for the community and is a priority for me. $25 million is earmarked for the long-term health study, which our residents so desperately need and, quite frankly, they deserve. The settlement also funds a new independent air monitoring and symptom reporting system administered and operated by a third party, not the gas company. This system will provide much-needed transparency, accountability, and ultimately a peace of mind to our community. The county has fought aggressively in court to win relocation benefit reimbursements and cleaning costs for our residents. SoCalGas has issued over $75 million in reimbursements for housing costs as well as incidental costs. Los Angeles County's lawsuit put pressure on SoCalGas and regulators, which led to significant testing and safety improvements, not only at Aliso Canyon, but throughout the entire county of Los Angeles. All wells in operation have been upgraded and configured with new inner tubing, providing a dual barrier protection to mitigate the potential of the uncontrolled release of gas again. We are studying seismic risk, and LA County will push any mitigations that are recommended as a result of this study. There are also new DOGGR regulations requiring safety upgrades and risk management planning at all underground storage facilities, not only in LA County, but throughout the state. While we have come a long way, we still have a long way to go. My office has been active in the formation and review of the health study and will continue to fight for our Porter Ranch residents. This tentative settlement, which I hope will be approved by the court in the next 60 days, marks the first step toward the healing for the Porter Ranch residents. The community has my continued commitment to remain a proactive advocate on their behalf. And with that, I would like to introduce actually a dear friend as well, the Honorable Mayor of LA City, Eric Garcetti.
Thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much to our Attorney General, our City Attorney, and our County Supervisor for their dogged work. I know Catherine Barger, when she was Chief of Staff, was there on the ground, as I saw Mitch Englander there almost every single day, working hard to talk to constituents, to deal with the situation. And we have two of the finest legal minds in this country who have represented the people in the settlement that we have before us today. Aliso Canyon was a traumatic event. It caused trauma to our residents. It caused trauma to our environment. and it should fundamentally make us rethink our relationship with power production and the locating of facilities near our homes. It wasn't just Porter Ranch residents, as Councilmember Englander reminded me. We had evacuations in Chatsworth and Northridge, the northwest San Fernando Valley, the San Fernando Valley that I grew up in, made the worst kind of history, with the largest such methane leak in history. We see this today as a good step forward, a comprehensive agreement that is not exhaustive, but one that gets the community what they deserve. First, health. People who live in the northwest San Fernando Valley deserve to know what the long-term health effects of living next to that sort of a leak was and will be. Nothing less. And this settlement will allow that to happen. The earlier settlement that the state led, not the state attorney general, but state regulators led, was wholly inconclusive and did not have the resources necessary to allow residents to know the truth. So first, health. Second, it's mitigation. And this allows some mitigation to occur, some very good steps forward on mitigation. As we look at the class action lawsuits that are moving forward too, I think all of us share the opinion here, certainly those of us who are down the ground, that we need to bring as much mitigation to the communities most directly affected. Which brings me to the third piece, which is prevention. To see the electric buses here, to see some of the work that's included is a very important step in this direction. But we need to fundamentally rethink our relationship with carbon-generated electricity. We estimate in the city of Los Angeles, we've spent about $300 million in recent years on energy efficiency, because we need to reduce not only our dependence on coal, as we're doing in the city of Los Angeles to get completely off of coal, we need to get off of carbon. We've seen the cost. For a long time, we heard that gas was cleaner and better. Long term, as our city is doing, the first big city in the world really to go from fundamentally from the ground up with our own generation to move to 100% renewable sources of electricity for our communities, for our transportation, and for our air. We've pledged to do that at the Port of Los Angeles by becoming a zero-emission port. We've pledged to do that with the utility, Department of Water and Power. And I think as we get through this and as those residents of Porter Ranch and surrounding communities continue to litigate, we need to make sure that there is as much attention given to the preventive efforts as well in those communities. We need to get people back to living the lives that they were promised, to be able to live in the communities that they dreamed of being in. And we see a really strong step forward that I want to congratulate our legal team here between the county council, our great city attorney, and great attorney general have achieved here today. With that, and I know we're coming back to Spanish, I'm going to say one sentence if I can cheat. Todas las comunidades merecen la justicia, y este es un paso muy importante adelante en este camino. With that, let me introduce a man who literally worked tirelessly on this issue. I've never seen somebody work as hard on behalf of his constituents, setting up a center for people to come to, the panic, the health concerns that people had. Mitch Englander was there every step of the way, and he's our last speaker today, our council member, Mitch Englander.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I want to thank our city attorney, Mike Fuhr, and our California Attorney General, Javier Becerra, for reaching this historic settlement. This is a positive first step, and I say first step, in mitigating the fallout for what was the largest gas blowout in U.S. history. I think a lot of the points that were made about the settlement have already been made. But I'd like to let folks know that the story is far from over. It doesn't stop here. As a council member that represents the nearly 20,000 residents that were displaced, moved out of their homes during this environmental disaster, and the thousands more that were affected, people had to leave their homes and stay away for several months. Over the holiday seasons, and no less, the children had to find new schools. 2 schools were shut down. 4 parks were shut down. Businesses were closed. The place for months in the northwest San Fernando Valley looked like a ghost town. In short, things were uncertain, so we must ensure that this never happens again. While the settlement is a start, and to this point, I emphasize that the $25 million for a significant health study and ongoing fence line monitoring of the air quality is critically important, I will not stop demanding accountability from this utility and from others, the regulators, with the ultimate goal of permanently closing down this facility once and for all. The closure of Aliso Canyon within 10 years is the stated policy, according to a letter from Governor Brown to the state's Energy Commission that dates to July 19th of last year. So the clock has already started. As a council member and a resident whose family and neighbors were deeply affected by this leak, I will continue to demand that we achieve full closure by the deadline, if not sooner. So I want to thank everybody here today. I know a lot has to be done to continue to make sure that we reach the goals in this settlement, that we make sure that not only we have the funding in place for the health study, but it's done effectively, it's done independently, it's done efficiently, it's done transparently, and that information is shared continuously. The health monitoring of the air is critically important. We need, at best, near real-time information, but it's got to be on the web, transparent and real-time to share with people in case of a leak until we close this down. We need to share that information with everyone and make it accessible to make sure that we know what's happening in our own backyard. And so I want to thank you again and turn this back over to our Attorney General, Javier Becerra.
And I think Mike wanted to thank some of his team.
Yeah, I omitted something that is just essential. I need to, by name, thank members of my team who were so essential to this outcome. Jessica Brown, who heads our environmental justice work. Jacqueline Blankenship. Nick Carno. Miguel Bahomen. Mark Soto. Stephen Shin, who's a paralegal. Rosa Borelli, who's a legal assistant. Martha Pateras, who's our environmental investigator, as well as our chief deputy, Jim Clark, and Tom Peters, who heads our civil litigation. Forgive me for not doing that earlier, team. You were magnificent throughout this process. Mr. Attorney General? Sure.
He'll get back to you guys on your anniversary to
that's
make
right.
up for it, right? We want to thank again all the teams that made this settlement possible. We want to thank everyone who spoke, and we want to thank the people of Porter Ranch and the city of Los Angeles and the county, and the people of the state of California as well, for their patience and appreciation for the work that has to get done by all these phenomenal folks who work on behalf of the city, the county, and the state of California to make sure that we get our work done and we protect the people of our great city, county, and state. So I'll thank you very much. We'll take any remarks or do any remarks in Spanish if you so choose later on. Thank you.